This year is 2023. It marks the 10th year of the World Happiness Report. And over all these years, they got us used to the rankings of well-being across countries. And here you just see a little sample of their measurements. What you notice is that over time, basically the usual suspects rank on the top. Finland, Denmark, Norway, Iceland, Netherlands, so on and so forth. Little variation. So what do we learn about how to improve people's well-being? I got two messages. I don't know you. The first is more is better. And the second is, if you want to be happy, move to Scandinavian countries. With this paper, Kelsey and I, well, I don't know if you tell me if you disagree now. Would like to make a point that there is at least a third way that we should consider on how we can improve people's well-being. Enters well-being efficiency. I think that the humble aim of this work is to attract the attention to the fact that a measure of societal progress should include countries' ability to transform their resources into quality of life, that is, well-being efficiency. Why so? Well, first and foremost, because subjective well-being policy advice focuses on the amount of inputs, not how well these inputs are used to produce well-being. That is, although we recognize the limits of traditional GDP policies, we fall in prey of the same limitations of paying attention only to maximizes the X, is the X's. It's basically as if in our well-being equation, we basically would increase well-being only by expanding the X. And I wonder if that would even be possible. So with this work, we're trying to put the attention on what we can do to change the beta, which is how we transform, how we extract utility from what we have. And this point also allows us to link with how well resources are, focusing on how well resources are used allow us to link with sustainability issues, which I believe should be an important component of any reasoning on measuring progress. And what do we learn once we look into well-being efficiency? Here you see a new ranking. On the column in the middle, you see the ranking, the list of efficient countries as we computed it. And on the right-hand side column, you see the ranking according to the World Happiness Report. We learn right away that there is some correlation between the usual suspect and the new ranking of based on well-being efficiency, but the two measures are not exactly the same. And some new juicy stories can come out of here. In this scatter plot, I'm putting in relation our score of well-being efficiency on the x-axis with the country ladder coming from the World Happiness Report, 2021 data. You see that there is the positive relation between the two measures, but some interesting elements come out. For instance, you may notice Lebanon and Spain are more or less the same level of efficiency, 93%, but Spain has nearly 2.5 points higher well-being than Lebanon, suggesting that in this case, yes, the efficiency is the same. They probably have more of what matters for well-being. We also notice something else. We are used to see Scandinavian countries as those that top the ranking of well-being. But now if you look at the measure of well-being efficiency, only Finland appears as a fully efficient country. Most other Scandinavian countries fall behind. That is, given the resources Scandinavian countries have, they could be much happier than what they currently are. They are wasting resources. And also, well-being efficiency can compensate for the scarcity of resources. Look at the position of these two countries, Costa Rica, that is fully efficient, and Germany, that falls a little bit behind. They have more or less the same level of well-being. But Germany has much more resources than Costa Rica, and yet Costa Rica manages to keep up. So efficiency can make a difference. And I hope that with these examples, I managed to get your attention and to make you curious to know about how we compute this well-being efficiency and where it comes from. We use data envelopment analysis to compute our measures of well-being. Data envelopment analysis is a non-parametric method that is widely used in economics to compute efficiency scores, has been used in banking, finance, evaluation of efficiency of schools, even judicial activities. It basically works by creating an empirical efficient frontier that envelopes all the other observations. And basically, all the countries that perform best sit on the frontier and they are fully efficient. The other countries find their position in this envelope, and their distance from the frontier becomes a measure of inefficiency. There are some typos here. This is not productive efficiency. In our case, will be well-being efficiency because the output we're trying to maximize is well-being. Data envelopment analysis does not require, this is not the only way to compute efficiency scores, but compared to alternatives, has some advantages. It does not require to specify a functional form, so it's very flexible, accommodates multiple inputs, like in our case, we will see very shortly, and it's not affected by problems of multicollinearity or heteroscedasticity. To do our work, which data we use? We take the data from the World Happiness Report that generously provides the aggregate numbers as appendix to today's report. Our data come from the 2021 report. And so our measure, you're all familiar with this, right? With this framework. So we have the Cantril ladder as a measure of well-being. And according to the World Happiness Report series, there are these 6 factors that basically explain 75% approximately of the overall variation of well-being around the world. And basically, we take these as our reference framework to define what are the inputs of well-being, what are the inputs, and what is the output of our well-being efficiency measure. So the country ladder is our measure of output, and our input are GDP per capita, social support, healthy life expectancy, freedom of choice, generosity, perception of corruption. Why we did so, it will be clear in a little while. We're not the first one to investigate the issue of well-being efficiency, although this literature is fairly recent. As far as I know, the term happiness efficiency has been coined for the first time in 2012 by Binder and Bröckel, where they apply this, however, to individual level data to see how well individuals transform their resources into well-being. Our work comes closer to 2 papers published in 14 and 21 by Debnath and Shankar and Nikolova and Popova. They both run analysis at country level. They use fairly similar technique to the one we use, not exactly the same. The first ones study how various indicators of good governance translate into happiness efficiency. So they focus on good governance. Nikolova and Popova study country efficiency. They come very close to our research question, but they check how well countries transform income, education, and health into subjective well-being. And I hope that this gives you an idea of why we chose to follow the framework of the World Happiness Report. The reason is that we need to have some guidance in order to decide which inputs and which output we should consider in our, if you want, production function of well-being. And one of the contributions of our work is that we basically decide to take a kind of an agnostic position and basically take the established framework of the World Happiness Report that has found that 6 indicators correlate pretty well, explain a good share of the overall variance of well-being, and we try to operationalize that one. In addition, we also study the relation between well-being efficiency with measures of economic efficiency and sustainable well-being. This is quite interesting because traditionally, measures of economic efficiency are considered important because they are ingredient of economic growth and lead to better lives. In this way, we can actually check if there is indeed an association between leading, increasing economic productivity or promoting well-being efficiency. There are also some minor additional contributions that I will not show this afternoon for to spare time before we get to the beer. But you can find them in a paper that has been published 6 months ago approximately on the International Productivity Journal, I believe. Let's look a little bit into some of the results. This bar plot shows you the distribution of well-being efficiency scores in our sample of 126 countries. This bar shows you the countries that are fully efficient. And also you see that all this distribution is translated towards the right, which gives us quite a good information because it says that nearly 50% of our countries in our sample are either fully efficient or efficient at least at 90%. The remaining 50%, however, report declining levels of efficiency. And the last one here is Zimbabwe. In all these countries, the best policy to promote well-being is, of course, to expand the inputs, but also to understand how well these countries can improve the transformation of what they have into well-being. Just to give you an example, a little back of the envelope computation focusing on Zimbabwe suggests that if we increase their well-being efficiency from 50% to 75%, we would gain, the well-being would increase in a way that is equivalent to expanding all their inputs by 50%, doubling their GDP, doubling their healthy life expectancy, doubling their social relations, and so on and so forth. Of course, I wish that for a country as poor as Zimbabwe, this can be done, but there are some physical limits. For instance, expanding healthy life expectancy from the current 56 years to the needed 84 years is impossible. The highest healthy life expectancy we observe in our sample is 77 years in Singapore, followed by 75 in Japan. We know also that across countries, usually communist countries report lower well-being than others. And in this chart, you can see at the same time the average levels of well-being efficiency by region and the average score of life satisfaction in the same regions. So we see also that Latin America scored pretty high together with Europe. Is it possible that these regional differences are driven somewhat by well-being efficiency, or by the fact that some regions, people in some regions are better able to extract utility from what they have? Well, for instance, post-communist countries are less efficient than European, other developed, and Latin American and Caribbean countries, but are more efficient than Sub-Saharan and East and South Asia. However, if we compare the communists with Central Asia and North Africa, the levels of happiness are, the level of efficiency are comparable, but the level of happiness is way higher in Latin American. So this suggests that in these countries, former communist countries are probably managing to extract more utility from the resources they have. The least efficient country in our sample are the East and Southern Asian countries, followed by and very close to sub-Saharan Africa. But the average levels are very different. And in this case, it suggests that East and South Asia are probably wasting resources. We then focus on to starting analyzing what are the correlates of well-being efficiency. We run a very simple correlation analysis between our ingredients of the inputs of our production function of well-being and well-being efficiency. What we find is that well-being efficiency correlate positively with GDP per capita, social support, and healthy life expectancy. The possible interpretation of this result is that these variables not only contribute directly to people's well-being, but they also enable them to perform better and to enjoy better their life. For instance, healthy life expectancy is likely necessary in order to fully profit of your social relations, to fully be an effective worker on the workplace. We then plugged all this into a regression system to see, the usual horse race, to see which of these correlates explains better well-being. And not only we focused on the usual inputs, but we started investigating some additional plausible variables that could explain well-being efficiency. So in the first column, you see the regression with just the inputs from the World Happiness Report. And what you can see is that if you go across columns, there is just one input that survives this test, which is healthy life expectancy. When we move across to column 3 and 7, here I'm shortening a very big table, you see that unemployment rate adds a negative and weakly statistically significant coefficient. And then we have optimism that attracts a highly statistically significant coefficient. What does this mean? Well, I think healthy life expectancy is important for well-being efficiency for the reasons I mentioned before. It allows us to function better. If we drop unemployment rate just for a second, optimism is another aspect that allows us to cope with difficulties in lives, with optimism allows us to live longer, possibly in better health. Therefore, it's plausible that it changes our relation, our ability to extract utility from what we have. The same unemployment rate, although it's weakly significant, so perhaps the result will be reversed. Unemployment rate can produce, significant scars in people's lives, and those can affect their ability to function in society. And last, I want to show you a little bit the relation between well-being and economic efficiency. In the last part of this presentation, I focus on how well-being efficiency relate to this measure. Economic efficiency is important because it contributes to economic growth and therefore should deliver better lives. However, when we put in relation with our measure of well-being efficiency, you see that there is a very flat line. Here, this is on the y-axis, you see a very traditional measure of economic productivity, which is GDP over capital and labor. On the contrary, when we put in relation our measure with another measure of, if you want, well-being efficiency, which is in this case, the Happy Planet Index, I think that Martin spoke about it today. So the Happy Planet Index is the share of happy life years, if you want, divided by the ecological footprint. So it can be seen as a measure of sustainability, sustainable efficient sustainability. You see that in this case, we find a very positive and statistically significant association, which is not driven by the fact that our two indices share the same numerator. Now, if I still have, no, okay. Of course, choosing the World Happiness Report as a reference to inform our well-being efficiency is subject to error, because still 25% of the variance is not explained, because still there could be other factors that we are not including and that could matter for well-being efficiency. So in the remaining 3 slides that I have, we basically run some robustness checks to see how much sensitive our well-being efficiency is to alternative specification. In this case, we have been omitting inputs one at a time, and in each case, we compared the ranking of the countries we obtained with the initial well-being efficiency. You see it right away that there is no big difference that we obtain when we remove one input at a time from our list. The same goes if we include inputs. Here we've done a bit, you know, you can add whatever, but we've added unemployment rate, Gini of income, year of schooling, optimism, quality of governance, social expenditures. The worst case we get when social expenditure is included in the Spearman. And well, for those of you who are familiar with DA, DA is sensitive to outliers because this can change the shape of your frontier. So in this case, we have dropped the extreme observations in our sample, and we still get very consistent results. In conclusion, the combined interpretation of our results provides insights about countries' effective use of inputs, the correlates of efficiency, and the validity of our measure. High well-being efficiency does not imply high well-being, although the two are very correlated. And high efficiency can compensate for low endowments of the inputs. Well-being efficiency correlates positively and significantly with the Happy Planet Index, but is not correlated with economic efficiency. And I think that, I wish to think that this is just the first stepping stone towards a better understanding of what can affect people's ability to extract utility from what they have. And with this, I wish to thank you all for the attention, for being here, and I look forward to seeing you in 2024.